For the best meat you have ever eaten in your life, go to samsbutchershop.com. Enter the coupon code Triple T when you check out for a 10% discount. Hello, everybody. trailertrashtim. Thanks for joining me. It's good to be with you on this Friday morning. I'm sorry I didn't post yesterday, but since I got back from Missouri, I have been swamped. So I've had to be, I've had to catch up on a lot of stuff and do what I got to do. So anyway, with work, my job and whatnot. But I took some time last night to get ready for the show today. So I got several things I want to talk about here. Marina's back. She's hard at work. I think she's in the tub right now, actually. I don't know if she'll pop in here or not, but she'll be here sooner or later. She just got a lot going on as well, trying to get resettled back in, doing a load of laundry and all kinds of stuff. So you know how that goes. All right, let's get going. I don't even want to talk about the State of the Union address. I told you my thoughts about that debacle the other day, how I thought that the GOP, nobody in the GOP should have even attended the blooming thing. But, of course, they don't listen to me, right? But let's start with this. In the year 2020, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, one of Arkansas's two senators, Tom Cotton, he's fairly decent, although he is a neocon. He thinks we need to be at war with everybody. But sometimes he gets some things right. And in the year 2020, Senator Cotton wrote an op-ed which was published in the New York Times. And in the op-ed, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but the title of the op-ed was "Send in the Troops." And the summary of it was this. Cotton entitled the article "Send in the Troops," which made an argument in favor of the president deploying the military to quell the George Floyd riots that sparked havoc in cities across the country. Publication of the op-ed caused turmoil among woke staff at the paper, with several editors being pushed out. Send in the troops to help restore law and order. So this op-ed outraged the woke crowd. The suggestion that Tom Cotton had to send in troops to restore law and order. You remember 2020, it's the George Floyd riots and a lot of societal upheaval we had all across the nation, in the Twin Cities and in St. Louis and in various other places. Atlanta had some riots at the time. They set a Wendy's on fire, I remember. You had so many Democrats who were now in favor of getting rid of cops. Do you remember that? We just need to get rid of cops. That's the problem. The cops are the problem. We need to get rid of law enforcement. If we would just get rid of law enforcement, then that would end all these crime waves we're having in the country. Right? Makes a lot of sense. So Cotton writes his op-ed, "Send in the troops to calm things down." You may also recall back when Trump was president, and they were having so much upheaval in the, I believe it was in Portland. It was either Portland or Seattle. They had it in both places. I think it got really bad in Portland. And Trump was offering to send in federal troops or, National Guard or what have you, or federal assistance to help quell that violence. And all the woke gang out on the left coast, they said, no, we don't want your help. We don't want anybody coming in here. And Trump just basically said, okay, fine, let your city burn down if you like. I tried to help you and you don't want it, so you're not going to get it. So this is what Senator Cotton was suggesting in his op-ed from 4 years ago. Now, why do I mention all this? Because whether you have heard it or not, this past Wednesday, day before yesterday, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, H-O-C-U-L, Kathy Hochul, she announced Wednesday that she is going to be deploying 750 members of the New York National Guard to the New York City subway system to assist the NYPD with bag searches at the entrances of busy train stations. Now, this comes as the crime rate increased 20% during the first 2 months of 2024 compared to the same period last year, according to NYPD data cited by the New York Post. So there you have it. The woke gang, the Democrats, all scoffed at Tom Cotton for suggesting that we send National Guard troops into these hot spots to quell the violence and to set things back in order. But the Democrats just, we can't do that. And the woke crowd, no, we don't want any troops. Well, here we go. Left-wing, lunatic, extremist, Democrat New York Governor Kathy Hochul says, we've got this crime wave in New York City. I know, I've got a great idea. Why don't we send in the National Guard troops to maintain law and order? Well, golly, Governor Hochul, hats off to you. I think that's a great idea. But wait a minute, haven't we heard this somewhere before? Is this just not typical of Democrats? Absolutely typical. If a Republican suggests something like what she just did, then he's going to hear it all. He's racist. He's bigoted. He hates black people and gay people. He's homophobe. He's, all the typical things. But then the Democrat figures out what they need to do, and what they figure out they need to do is exactly what a Republican suggested they should do 4 years ago. But if it's an idea of a Democrat, well, that's okay. There's no problem with that because, as you all know, it's impossible for a Democrat to be a racist. It's impossible for a Democrat to be a misogynist or a bigot or a homophobe. That doesn't apply to Democrats, folks. It's only when Republicans make these suggestions that it's all those things. But if Kathy Hochul can do it, well, now we're talking. This is some brilliant thinking, and she should be lauded and applauded and rewarded for coming up with such a brilliant idea. And of course, Tom Cotton had a field day with this on Twitter, and I don't blame him. He just posted a meme of the National Guard going to New York City, checking the bags, and he just simply said, sending in the troops to help restore law and order. And so there's a lot of upheaval now. There was at the New York Times when they published this op-ed. The Daily Telegraph editor said, quote, remember when the New York Times fired its opinion editor for running a piece suggesting pretty much this? Daily Telegraph editor James Morrow asked, Tom Cotton proposed deploying the National Guard to quell some of the most destructive riots in American history. Hochul is doing it for quotidian law enforcement purposes, Washington Free Beacon reporter Aaron Sabarium wrote. Crickets from New York Times staffers. So the point of it is simply this. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, if a Republican suggesting, if it had been Trump who proposed sending the National Guard troops to New York City to quell the violence, he would be called all of the aforementioned names. If Biden did it, that would just be a brilliant move on his part. That's how that works. You got it? If a Democrat does it, it's good. It's brilliant. It's something we need to do. It's only when Republicans suggest it that you hear Democrats howling, what an authoritarian we've got as a president. My Lord, democracy in America is over. If we get Trump back in office, it's going to be an authoritarian run amok. I would remind you that it's under the Biden administration that we've got American journalists being arrested for doing their job. Who was the guy that was hauled off? I can't remember his name. If you can hear me in there, yell at me. There was a reporter reporting on the J6 prisoners, and he was arrested for doing his reporting.
Steve Baker.
Steve Baker, thank you.
I think that's it.
She thinks that's it. And you remember Tucker Carlson reported that he was contacted by the Department of Justice before his interview with the evil Vladimir Putin and said he was going to be subject to arrest. This is America. We have the, what do they call it? The fourth rail of politics, the fourth rail, the media. They have the allowance to ask questions, to do their job, to do the work of journalism without any encumbrances or interference from the government. And here's the DOJ telling Tucker, oh, no, no, no. Now, if you want to go interview Macron, that's okay. Or Justin Trudeau, that would be all right. Or, I don't know, Netanyahu, that would be just fine. Or Boris Johnson, although you got to pay him $1 million first. But you don't dare go and talk to Vladimir Putin. If you do, you're going to be subject to arrest. That's the American media, at least those that are somewhat on the right. That's your government. But they have the gall to say that Trump would be an authoritarian. Folks, if you want to find an authoritarian, find a Democrat. There's your authoritarian right there. It wasn't under the Trump administration that journalists were being arrested for crap's sakes. That would be under the current occupant of the White House. All right, let me move on. I have got to touch on our debt. Folks, this is just, besides the border, this is affecting Americans and the world more than anything else that I can possibly think of. As you know, the debt of the United States now stands at $34 trillion, an unfathomable number. Now, I want to give you a little context to where we are now, and I don't have to go far back in time. In October, specifically October the 22nd of 2023, our national debt was $31 trillion. The following July, that was October of 22. The following July of 2023, the debt increased to $32 trillion. In October of last year, just this last October, from July to October, it increased to $33 trillion. July, August, September, October. You got that? $32 to $33 trillion. And then this year, just over a month ago, in January of 2024, our debt increased to $34 trillion. Do the math. October, November, December, January. Right now, it's $34 trillion, and it is climbing. Nobody's stopping it. Nobody's getting a handle on it. Nobody except people such as the Rand Pauls of the world and the Thomas Masseys are even addressing it. Most Republicans aren't even talking about it. The McConnells and Romneys and, your garden variety Republicans are not even talking about it. But I am telling you, our debt is unsustainable. This is more than a financial crisis, ladies and gentlemen. This is, I contend, a moral crisis. Why do I say it's a moral crisis? For this reason. We are spending money like drunken sailors that we do not have. We are kicking the can down the road, and we are saddling future generations of Americans that have not even yet been born with this unsustainable, massive, incomprehensible debt. That is immoral, is it not? I found an article, believe it or not, on MSNBC, which of course is part of the public relations arm of the Biden administration. And this article admits that the national debt of the United States is increasing at the rate of $1 trillion per 100 100 days. Can you even fathom this in your mind? Can you even rationalize this with your senses? It's not logical. You can't even do the math. It is an unfathomable number. Were I $1,000 in debt, were I $100,000 in debt, I can at least understand why. I can do the math on that. You know, I've got a mortgage, I've got an outstanding balance that I pay on, so I have that debt which I am servicing every month. But I understand that. I've got a plan to deal with that. I mean, that's typical for, I would guess, most responsible Americans. I have no other debt. I can manage that particular debt. But I can't relate the figure of $34 trillion down to a personal level. In other words, I don't know how you translate $34 trillion to a ratio where you would give me a relative sum that's applicable to an American family. It's just so unimaginable. It's unfathomable, and it is immoral. And there's no coming back from it. It just gets beyond stupid, beyond silly, beyond rationale. Now, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. This budget is not going to be balanced. Now, I maintain, I don't even know if there is a way anymore. I'll be honest with you. I can think of ways to balance a federal budget, but when you get to such a figure as $34 trillion, I just don't know if there's a way. I really don't. I just don't know if it's possible. I don't think it is, but here's what I do believe is going to happen. I believe this with everything in me. I believe you can take this to the bank. The United States of America is headed to what I call the Great Default. I would tell you confidently, we are going to default on this debt. Sooner or later, there's going to be a default. I don't see any other possible way. This is not unprecedented. It happened in Greece. We are bankrupt. We are beyond bankrupt. We are so far beyond bankruptcy that you can't fathom it. There's no way to come up with some kind of a payment plan. The number one item, serviceable item in our debt, in our budget, is our debt. We pay more just to... In other words, you got a credit card, you can't pay the bill off, so you make the minimum payment. That's what we're talking about here on a grand scale. More than the other items in the budget, such as welfare, more than the military budget, more than Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and on and on and on it goes. The number one item is just to essentially make the minimum payment, to service the interest on the debt. And by the way, who are we paying? Of course, China. China owns us. You mark my words, we are headed for a great default. Sooner or later, I don't know if it's going to be in my lifetime. I think it will be. It may be imminent. And sad to say, there ain't a president you can put in office that's going to turn this around. I believe with all my heart, we could vote in Rand Paul tomorrow and send, 535 Rand Pauls to the House and Senate. I still don't think we could turn it around. I really don't. It's that bad. Now, what happens when there is a great default? What happens when all the bills come due and we can't pay it, and we just say the debts, we're just erasing the debt? It's like it doesn't exist any longer. What happens then? Nothing good. Nothing good. Probably, and I'm no economist, I'm just a regular guy here in Alabama, but you're probably looking at hyperinflation, the devaluation of the dollar. Some of you that are good at economics, post down below and tell me if you think I'm on track here with this, and tell us what happens when we have a great default. Nothing good, folks. I mean, this is where you get the loaf of bread for $100 or whatever. You know, you got to wheelbarrow full of cash and you can't go buy a jar of peanut butter with it. We're headed for a great default. And not to get bogged down here, but this is why, please listen to me. I don't have anything to sell you other than meat from Sam's Butcher Shop, which is a good thing to buy. But I'm telling you, folks, I don't have anything to sell you, but I'm going to tell you, you need to buy essentials. You need to buy survival food. You need to invest in gold. You need toilet paper. You need booze. You need tobacco. You need, what am I saying? I'm saying you need things that actually have value if the shit hits the fan. You need things your neighbors may run out of, and if they find out you've got them, they might be willing to give you a few gold coins to get that bottle of hooch or that pack of Marlboros or whatever. Or, hey, you got any toilet paper? I'll give you $50 for a roll. You got any survival food? I mean, after you get done ordering from Sam's Butcher Shop, you might want to go ahead and call somebody like Patriot Supply or one of these other vendors that sell the food in the buckets. You know what I'm saying? Be prepared. Take care of your... Don't have any faith in your government, folks. Don't have any faith in your government is not going to bail you out. Your government ain't coming for you. Your government... I remember every summer at the end of summer camp, I was having a great time, but by the end of summer camp, I was missing my mama. I want my mama to come get me. How would I feel if mama just didn't show up? You can't depend on your government if you're an American, and wherever else you may be, it may apply, but you cannot depend on them to bail you out. You cannot put all your eggs in the same basket. You need to diversify, and you need to invest in durable goods that have actual value that you can barter with. Buy a pig! Buy chickens! That way you got ham and eggs, right? Buy some goats. Buy a cow. Buy you a milk cow. You don't recover from $34 trillion in debt and climbing. And I've seen the chart. I'm looking at the chart right now. I wish I could show it to you. Whenever the producer gets dialed in here, we're going to be able to show some media to you. But this chart is showing the debt. It looks almost exponential. I mean, every 100 days it goes up another $1 trillion. It's just silly. I mean, it's just silly money. You can't fathom it. $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. I remember when we were outraged because the debt was in the billions. Oh, for those days again, right? No doubt. All right, now, let me, you want to pop in here and say hello? Marina's looking at me. Everybody say hey to Marina. She'll be on here sooner or later, but she's saying no. All right, one more thing before I get out of here. I had a comment in a recent video, 1 or 2 videos ago, from one of our subscribers, a great guy, Joe Hendricks. Joe, love you, brother. You're great. Joe emails me sometimes. He's a viewer. And he's really upset right now with Donald Trump, and I don't blame him because some of the, Donald Trump just makes me crazy. He makes me pull out whatever hair I got left. I love him personally. I like a lot of the stuff. He's great in his speeches. He makes you stand up and cheer, and then, man, I tell you, he gets in office and he just, he's a fiscal nightmare. He's talking about doing things in Gaza. He drives me out. He just drives me to the loony bin. But what choice have we got at this point, right? Shortcut. But look, I heard that. He drives me crazy. Marina yells short putt. You probably... But, Joe was bringing this up, how all of these things Trump does, which just infuriate you. We need a fiscal conservative in office, and that's why Vivek Ramaswamy was saying all the right things. Hopefully, please select Vivek, if you will, or somebody that's got some fiscal sanity, perhaps, that this has just simply got to be addressed. But somebody, I don't remember if it was Joe or not, but somebody was asking me, what do we do? What can we do? And I want to address that quickly here. Number one, if if you're an American, or even if you're not an American watching me, because I got people all over the world watching, I understand that. But, you know, in particular, if you're an American, what can you do? You're concerned for your country. You're concerned about our plight. You're concerned about the debt. You're concerned about the border. You're concerned about a lot of the things that I talk about and rail against here on the channel. And you're asking yourself, well, what can I do? I feel all I can do is vote. What can I do? It's a legitimate question. It's a good question. What can you do? You want to do something. What can you do? Well, I'm going to give you some practical answers to a very good question right here and right now. Number one, you can raise your voice. Listen, I'm just one old boy down here in the sticks in Alabama, as you know. And one day I went out on my deck, took my camera here, and I just shot a video, and I started talking about the things that concern me. That's what I did. I started a YouTube channel, and that's what I do. And you know what? There's nothing keeping you from doing that. Maybe it's not your cup of tea. Maybe you don't want to do it. But hey, the water's warm. Jump in if you want to do it. I'll subscribe to your channel. I started doing that, and people started subscribing to my channel, and it's given me a forum, and I appreciate that. And I don't take it for granted. I appreciate each and every one of you. So this is a way for me to raise my voice, but there's more than you can do than that. You know, there was a Democratic lawmaker one time. He was a lefty. He was a big liberal, but he wasn't a lunatic like every single cotton-picking Democrat is today. This was a man who is a thorn in the side of the Gipper, Ronald Reagan, and his name was Tip O'Neill. How many of you remember Tip O'Neill? Let me see your hands out there. Tip O'Neill was a congressman from Boston. And he was always opposing Ronald Reagan. And, you know, I would never be in agreement with Tip O'Neill about anything. But he was famous for this particular saying, and he was actually right about this. Tip O'Neill had a famous saying, which was this: all politics are, do you know what it is? Local. All politics are local, and he was right about that. And the point I want to make about it is simply this: no matter where you live, what town you're in, what county you're in, if you're in the city, if you're in the country, if you're in Ireland, if you're in Australia, Japan, the Middle East, Greece, South America, no matter where you are, New Zealand, this is a true saying: all politics is local. Now, the fact of the matter is, we may have no say over who is the president of the United States, but you know what? You can employ something that I refer to as the Dogcatcher Strategy. What is the Dogcatcher Strategy? The Dogcatcher Strategy is simply this: if you want to change things in a political sense in your country, start on the local level. What is the lowest elected official where you live? Well, it could just be in your county, the old county dog catcher. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you know who your county dog catcher is? I'll be honest, I don't. I don't even know if we have one, to be honest. But let's just say hypothetically that you have a county dog catcher and he is an elected official. Guess what? You need to find out who he is. You need to know who the dog catcher is. Now let's work our way up the ladder. Do you know who your councilman is in your county? Your commissioner is in your county? Your local commissioner? I'm getting to that. Do you know who your town council members are? Do you know who your mayor is? Do you know who your school board official is? Do you know who your sheriff is or your police chief? Do you know who any of the deputies are? Do you know who your congressman is, your congressional representative? Do you know who your senators are? Do you know who your governor is? Do you know who any of your elected officials, do you know who they are? Now, you may not be able to make manifest any change in Washington at the executive level, but you know what? You could probably get in your car today and go and meet your county commissioner or perhaps your school board representative. What's the point? The point is you can affect change at the ground level, grassroots, right? This is where it starts. Maybe you can't do anything about what's happening in Washington directly, but you might be able to do something if you get in the whiskers of your school board member. And you say to your school board member, I've been hearing about these this woke literature that's making its rounds in public schools. You want to talk about that? You got time for me? Can you make about 15 minutes for me so I can talk to you about that? This is where it starts, folks. It starts on a local level. Do you know who your sheriff is? Is your sheriff a proponent of the Second Amendment? Is your sheriff a lover of liberty and freedom and the rights of the people he represents? Is your sheriff somebody you can go and talk to and get to know? Sheriffs are elected representatives, right? So you can do something on a local level, so you can raise your voice however you can, whether it be in media or just going and seeing your local representatives. This is where it begins. It begins at a local level. You know, Trump ascended to the presidency basically from the grassroots. I remember the first big rally he had. It was in Mobile, Alabama. And I mean, people filled the stadium in Mobile to overflowing. And that caused then Senator Jeff Sessions to say, man, this is a movement. And he was right. Trump got put into office because of grassroots efforts. The powers that be, the elite, the ruling class did not want Donald Trump. They did not want Ronald Reagan. But the grassroots people, the everyday folks like me and you, the people that get up and go to work every day and pay their taxes and obey the laws and play by the rules, they did want him. So this is how you affect change. Start on your local level. Do something. Don't just sit there and do nothing. Do something. Rather than sit around and whine about all of our problems, do something. If you can't do anything about Washington, you can do something about Hooterville or wherever you live, right? Hooterville. So I challenge you to do that. Hey, listen, thanks for joining me today. Give me a big thumbs up on the old video. I would appreciate that very much. And subscribe to the old Triple T channel if you have not yet, and come join our growing community. Give me your comments down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. This is Trailer Trash Tim, and I will see you soon.